Coming up on Arirang News, South Korea reports close to 700 new cases of COVID-19, the second highest daily number since the pandemic began. Distancing measures were strengthened last week, but the authorities may have to consider even tougher measures. South Korea holds a global convention to share with the world its contributions to world peace and sustainable development, and to discuss Korea's role in the post-pandemic era. And South Korea holds an international symposium to address the problem of low birth rates in many countries and the aging of their populations. It's 5 o'clock p.m. here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. South Korea today reported the second highest number of COVID-19 cases since the start of the pandemic, close to 700, mostly in the greater Seoul region. Stronger distancing measures took effect yesterday, but it'll take some time for them to work. The authorities had warned earlier that cases could rise to 1,000 a day in the coming weeks. Han Sung-woo reports.
South Korea on Wednesday added 686 new COVID-19 cases, the second highest daily tally it has ever recorded. The only time there were more infections in the country was back on February 29th, when the mass outbreak in Daegu and Gyeongsangbuk-do province led to 909 cases in a single day. 662 of Wednesday's new cases were locally transmitted, with over 500 of those coming from Seoul, Incheon, and Gyeonggi-do province. These include extra cases stemming from cluster infections at card-playing pubs in Itaewon, a marketplace in Seoul's Junggu district, and facilities such as nursing homes across the region.
We believe social distancing isn't showing its full effects due to widespread asymptomatic and latent infections.
Level 2.5 social distancing measures for the capital area and Level 2 for other regions came into effect on Tuesday. But with numbers still increasing, the government could consider raising the measures to Level 3. Out of all the people being tested, the proportion of positive cases reported on Wednesday fell to 2.15% from close to 5% the day before. The number of critically ill patients has increased by 15 to 149. And there have been 4 more fatalities, bringing the death toll to 556. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
President Moon Jaein chaired an emergency meeting this afternoon to review the COVID-19 situation in the greater Seoul area amid the surge in new cases. During the session, lasting close to an hour, President Moon was briefed on the overall situation in the capital, as well as efforts to secure hospital beds for the critically ill and the expansion of testing and tracing. It took place at the National Crisis Management Center within the Blue House compound. Participants included the Presidential Chief of Staff, the National Security Advisor, and the Ministers of Health and Defense. Officials from the local governments of Seoul, Gyeonggi-do, and Incheon took part via video conference. The details should be out by our next newscast. In other news, the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Stephen Biegun is in Seoul this week to meet with high-ranking officials, including Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa, to discuss issues related to North Korea and matters regarding the South Korea-U.S. alliance. It's expected to be his final trip to Seoul in his current role under President Trump. Yoon Jung-min reports.
South Korea's Vice Foreign Minister Choi Jong-gun, in his meeting with U.S. Deputy State Secretary Stephen Biegun on Wednesday, reiterated the strong Seoul-Washington alliance, saying both the Moon and Trump administrations have achieved a lot.
Both the United States and the Republic of Korea have started on what I consider as an irreversible path toward peacemaking on the Korean Peninsula. We are a rock-solid linchpin of peace and security in Northeast Asia.
In response, Biegun emphasized cooperation between the two countries on many fronts, saying his trip this time will not be the last one.
Not only on the alliance issues, but on relations with North Korea, and also combating and recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. I look forward to continuing close cooperation with you and your team in the weeks and months ahead.
The agenda included managing stability between the two Koreas during the power transition in Washington, as well as the handover of peninsula affairs to a new administration. Biegun's visit is seen as a farewell trip before U.S. President-elect Joe Biden takes office in January. There have been a series of unresolved issues between Seoul and Washington, including the Seoul defense cost-sharing negotiations and denuclearization talks with North Korea. Biegun, who also serves as the U.S. appointment on North Korea, also met Seoul's chief nuclear negotiator Lee Do-hun on Wednesday. Sources say they are meeting mostly focused on keeping the situation on the peninsula stable until January to deter North Korea from provocations while maintaining momentum for dialogue.
I look forward to good consultations today on how to maintain stability on the Korean Peninsula in this time of transition and how to keep alive the momentum for dialogue with North Korea.
Our work together over these 2.5 years is a story of leadership of President Moon, President Trump, of Chairman Kim Jong-un, of leaders willing to step outside the expected norms and predictable behaviors of the past to try to advance a bold new vision.
While here, Biden is expected to meet South Korea's National Security Advisor Seo-hun and other key figures. On Thursday, Biden will meet Seoul's Unification Minister Lee In-young for a breakfast meeting, and on Friday, he will meet Foreign Minister Kang Kyung-hwa for a banquet. He is to give a lecture at a local think tank on Thursday. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
Starting today, South Korea is holding a convention to share with the world its contributions to world peace and sustainable development, and to discuss Korea's role in the post-pandemic era. The entire convention is being streamed live on YouTube. 150 government agencies and research institutes are taking part, discussing topics such as climate change, urban development, and the methods South Korea has used to fight the pandemic. A keynote speech was given by the former Prime Minister of Norway, Gro Harlem Brundtland. Other international dignitaries include the Secretary of the OECD, Angel Gurria. It's hosted by the Korea Land and Housing Corporation and the National Research Council, and it'll run till Friday. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news this afternoon, and for that I'm joined on the line by Dr. Yang Jun-seok, Professor of Economics at the Catholic University of Korea. Professor Yang, good to have you back on today.
Happy to be here.
Stocks on Wall Street got a boost overnight, it seems, on hopes for the vaccine rollout by Pfizer and a stimulus package from Congress. The S&P closing at a new record high for the first time above 3,700. What's the story in the global markets?
Okay, well, as you just mentioned, the vaccine hopes are making the U.S. markets go up. The ironic thing is it's not the vaccine in the United States, but it's vaccine in the United Kingdom, England, which is making this positive effect on the United States stock market. Dow has risen 0.4%. It has set an intraday record at 30,246.22. S&P has gone up 0.3%. This is the first time that S&P closed above 3,700, and NASDAQ has gone up by 0.5%. Pfizer specifically, their stock has gone up by 3.2%. This is highest value that they reached in 2 years. BioNTech, which developed the vaccine along with Pfizer, their stock has gone up by plus 1.9%. Now, in addition to the vaccine starting to be administered in the United Kingdom, the progress on the U.S. stimulus bill seems to be making the market optimistic as well, but it is still stuck, and the sticking point seems to be whether they will give immunity for businesses if the employees catch coronavirus, and whether there will be additional aid for state and local governments. And another wild card is, even if they do agree on a stimulus bill, will President Trump sign it? But generally, because the negotiations are ongoing, and because the vaccine, the U.S. market does seem optimistic. European market had been mixed. FTSE is level. DAX fell on Monday, slight rise on Tuesday. CAC fell on Monday and Tuesday. Again, as I mentioned on Monday, the big story here is how will they do on Brexit. Prime Minister of United Kingdom, Boris Johnson, is visiting Brussels today to see whether deal is workable. They're nowhere near finishing the deal, but they're meeting today just to see whether they have the stomach to keep on negotiating, because by all reports, the negotiators are very, very tired. And the Asian market, again, it's mixed. Nikkei was up today. Shanghai was down all week. Hang Seng Hong Kong index was up today. These mixed results, especially for China and Hong Kong, seems to be affected by the U.S. sanctions on Chinese diplomats over the Hong Kong crackdown. So Shanghai seems to be pessimistic about the U.S. relationship. Hong Kong may be a bit optimistic because of that, because it seems that U.S. is trying to maintain Hong Kong's independence.
Well, Korea's main stock index today surged by more than 2%, making back all of yesterday's decline and more. What happened in the local market?
So Kospi hit a new high after falling yesterday. It hit 2,755.45. It rose by 2.02%. And there has been a lot of optimistic reports by foreign investment banks. S&P had said that the Kospi should reach 2,800 by the end of next year, but they're pretty close to being there already. J.P. Morgan apparently has a new report saying that the Kospi market is expected to reach 3,200 by the end of next year, but bit of a bad news there is that one of the reasons why J.P. Morgan is expecting the Kospi market to do that well is because of Korea's housing regulations being tightened. They expect money to flow from the housing market to the stock market. The problem is the Kospi market may be at a beginning of a bubble stage. If we look at the semiconductors in particular, Bloomberg had a report saying that the Korean semiconductor industry, if you look at the price-earning ratio compared to Taiwan, Korea is on the low side. The IT industry price-earning ratio for Korea is 19.6. Taiwan is 22.0. So they're arguing that Korean IT stock values are undervalued. But even though it may be undervalued compared to Taiwan, on the historical average, it is still overvalued. It is still a bit on the expensive side. So we'll have to see how the stock market goes. But I think it is hitting the lower limits of a bubble. And then closed back, it went up by 0.77% today to 913.81.
Well, Professor, we're almost out of time, but last month we saw borrowing by households rise by a record amount, and much of it was not mortgage loans. Tell us about that. What stands out to you?
Okay, well, the housing collateral loan went up by 6.2 trillion. Personal credit rose by 7.4 trillion. This was, I think, another bit of a mistake from government policy. The reason that the loans rose so quickly was that government announced that they will restrict loans in the future. So a lot of people tried to get these loans before the government instituted those restrictions. So in a sense, government worsened the problem by announcing that they will have these restrictions. Another problem that I'm worried about is that while the government wants to restrict these loans because the effect it has on the housing market and possible problems in the financial sector, remember that the social distancing for coronavirus has just strengthened, and some self-employed or some unemployed people are going to need those loans to try to live for the next 1 month or so during the heightened distancing, and they may not have enough loans available because of the government tightening.
All right, Professor, we'll have to leave it there for today. Thanks so much for coming on. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Now, many countries, including South Korea, face the prospect of shrinking populations because of their low birth rates. That's also making their societies older. To address these challenges, South Korea is holding an annual symposium with the UN Population Fund. Mnuchin has this report.
Statistics Korea is holding a conference with the United Nations Population Fund to discuss the growing concerns over low fertility and the aging population. The two-day event, scheduled on the 8th and 10th of December, is being held virtually due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Experts from around the world gathered on Tuesday to address some of the key factors that contribute to low fertility rates, such as uncertainty over employment and the lack of balance between work and family life. Rising house prices were also mentioned as a driving force for low birth rates in South Korea.
For couples who cannot afford housing, it is very difficult to imagine having a child in their lives because they cannot afford the expenses required to raise a child, as well as other expenses to make their lives better.
South Korea has been reporting a steady decline in fertility rates over the years. According to Statistics Korea, the total fertility rate in the third quarter of 2020 remained below 1, reaching an all-time low of 0.84. Also in this year's annual report by the UNFPA, the fertility rate per woman in South Korea was at 1.1, the lowest in the world. In an effort to reverse the current trajectory, experts say that policymakers should aim to help people realize their fertility aspirations and desires about family life. They stress policies should not be aimed at simply increasing the overall population, but should understand and support people's preferences and life choices.
Policies bring results when they support families in realizing their ideas about family life, when they have a long-term goal basically to support family.
On Thursday, the experts will examine the impact of an aging world and explore the policies needed to adjust to population trends. Mnuchin, Arirang News.
And that does it for this newscast. Thank you for watching.